What up? What up? What up? This is Jason William Johnson. Welcome to the Entrenality podcast live, where each week I have a conversation with an entrepreneur. We dig deep into their psychology, understand their personality type, and then we leverage that insight to have a conversation about their success. So, really excited about this conversation this evening with Patrice Perkins of Creative Genius Law, a champion for artists and creatives, around the world, attorney extraordinaire. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and bring her on. What up? What up, Treese? How everything going with you?
Hey, happy Wednesday. Everything's wonderful. How
I
are
know,
you?
right? I'm doing pretty good. I love the swag you got in the background. Tell me about that piece.
You know what? Actually, this was a gift from someone, and they don't know who they got it from, which, cardinal rule number one, know who the artist is, but it was the artist at Joe B Art Center. I know that there was an open studio sale and no signature, no nothing. So I'm hoping that one day someone lets me know whose work
So,
this is.
so if they're watching tonight, maybe they'll emerge. I mean, if they catch it on the podcast version, all audio, they're not gonna be able to see it. But hopefully, they catch the live
Right.
or the YouTube version, and they're able. That's me, So pretty much, yeah, just excited to have this conversation with you this evening. Me and you go way back, so really, this is also an opportunity to catch up as well. So just looking forward to having this conversation with you. So, pretty much. As you know, for the most part, we try to have a conversation about your story, your background, and what you're doing with your business through the lens of your personality type. So pretty much to get the ball rolling, what I typically do is a verbal personality assessment, just so we can identify what your personality type is, and then that's going to set the table for the rest of the conversation. So pretty much, I'm gonna give you four. I'm gonna give you a 4-question assessment. And each one of these questions, I'm gonna describe 2 types of people. You tell me which one sounds more like you. If both of them sound like you, pick the one that you would choose if somebody put a gun to your head. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first dimension of personality type focuses on how you prefer to recharge. The first type of person recharges by being alone. Socialization drains them. They may enjoy socializing, but after a while, they need to get alone. To be with their thoughts, their ideas. They prefer to do things with smaller groups as opposed to larger groups. And overall, they just really like to think before they speak, and just spend time alone to recharge their battery. The second type of person recharges by being around others. So, after a while, they enjoy, a long week of working and things like that. They want to be around others. They want to socialize with them. They want to do activities and engage with them. These individuals, if they're alone for a long period of time, it drains them after a while. So they need to be around others and do things outside themselves to increase their energy. Which one sounds more like you?
Person one.
All right. So, second dimension focuses on what type of information you prefer. The first type of person prefers information that's concrete and tangible. They can't touch it, see it, taste it, or smell it. It doesn't hold as much value to them. They like things that are tried, true, or proven and established, and they're not as comfortable with experimentation. So these are the individuals who wait to get the new iPhone as opposed to getting it the first day they come out, right? The second type of person prefers information. They live in a world of concepts and ideas. So they like things that's abstract. They like to draw connections between seemingly unrelated things. They're very comfortable with experimentation, and they're more big picture than detail oriented and more future oriented than present oriented. And then the first type I forgot to mention is more present oriented than future oriented and more detail oriented than big picture. Which one sounds more like you?
Person two.
Person two. All right. Third dimension focuses on how you prefer to make decisions. The first type of person makes decisions based on what they perceive to be a set of logical rules and principles. They don't consider their feelings or the feelings of others as much as the information itself. They strive to be more objective in their decision making, and they trust their mind more than their heart. The second type of person makes decisions based on the human element, their values. They consider their feelings and the feelings of others when making decisions. They strive for harmony in their decision making, and then they trust their heart more than their mind. Which one sounds more like you?
This one is hard. Do you mind going through the first option again?
So the first type of person makes decisions based on what they perceive to be a set of logical rules and principles. They don't consider their feelings or the feelings of others as much as the information itself. They strive to be objective in their decision making and consider and trust their mind more than their heart. The second one, trusts their heart more than their mind, makes decisions based on values and the human element, how it impacts others.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I'm
one?
person 2.
Person 2.
Mm-hmm.
Last dimension focuses on how you prefer to structure your lifestyle. The first type of person is more organized and structured. So they're going to wake up, they're going to have their day planned out as far as their schedule, breakfast at 9, lunch at 12, dinner at 5. These individuals get frustrated if their plans have to change. They like to know in advance how they're going to commit their time and resources. So they like to have things resolved, and they like to know what's going on. And these individuals are so planned, they tend to even plan their personal time. The second type of person is more flexible. They kind of go with the flow. They may have some things that they want to accomplish, but they let the day take care of it. They're very good at improvising and may even rely on that too much at times. And these individuals ultimately like to they're really they may plan because they have to, but if you leave it up to their own devices, they'll just be more comfortable going with the flow and letting things happen. Which one sounds more like you?
I used to be person 1, but currently I'm person 2.
All right, cool. So I am about to let you know what your personality type is based on the things that you shared with me. Give me 1 second. All right. So you're INFP personality type. So pretty much you're introvert, which means you recharge by being alone. You're intuitive, which means you make that you're more abstract and theoretical, live in the world of concepts and ideas, more future oriented. You are a feeler, which means you make decisions based on your values and human condition. And then you're a perceiver, which means you're more flexible. You prefer to go with the flow. So the INFP personality type makes a whole lot of sense with the work that you're doing right now. So INFPs, they're really focused on helping make the world a better place, helping people reach their full potential. They tend to have an affinity for writing, an affinity for the arts, and tend to be very, very creative individuals, right? And then the thing is the interesting thing, and like on your website, you describe yourself as a legal rebel. INFPs are definitely, can fit that mold, right? So basically, if they feel like a value is being violated, like in your instance, you probably feel like creatives are being exploited. They're not able to take it. They're not able to take advantage of the things that they're creating. They're not able to monetize it, create, legacy, generational wealth, et cetera, et cetera. So, INFP who holds those values that okay, that's wrong, would crusade against those type of things as far as doing things to make sure that they're able to help these individuals reach their full potential, protect their creations and things like that. So the way you positioned yourself in the legal field definitely fits the characteristics of an INFP for the most part. So pretty much the dominant function of an INFP is what they call introverted feeling. So pretty much this is basically your unique values and beliefs in the world, right? This can be your unique, perspective, your unique, approach, your unique style, et cetera, et cetera. But the introverted feeling is the function that focuses on individuality. It can also be protecting the individuality of others, right? So art is all about individuality and and self-expression and things like that. So I can definitely see the alignment there. And then your secondary function is extroverted intuition, which means you love to go into the world and explore the world of ideas, concepts, et cetera, et cetera. So you're probably you're probably using your values as you go out, and you're like, okay, what's the latest trends? What's going on? Like, what's the newest business opportunity? And you're able to generate a variety of different alternatives and options. And then you use that introverted feeling to make a decision on which is the best approach to take, what direction you should go with, and the ones that most align with you. So that's a little bit about your personality. Tell me if that sounds accurate.
It does sound accurate. I'm surprised by my personality type, but it sounds spot on.
Yeah, so pretty much. And I mean, interesting. I think when me and you used to like hang out when we were younger, I think you used to score ISFJ if I remember correctly.
I
But
did.
but but like so like just seeing your evolution, I think it makes sense that you score INFP for the most part. But you said it sounds like you, so
Yes.
I guess we're right, right? So pretty much for those who aren't familiar, tell us how you got started with Creative Genius Law.
Yep. So I started Creative Genius Law in 2010, and it really started because there were a few things going on personally. I knew that creatives in my own network did not have attorneys. And when I spoke to them about why, the reason was because they didn't want to deal with attorneys. They didn't think attorneys would get them necessarily. And to be honest, there was a little bit of an intimidation factor of lawyers just kind of taking advantage of you, taking all of the money, and also telling you no to everything. And so that, along with the fact that I had come from an undergrad backgrounds of econ, and I had a deep interest in studying just how the economy works, which evolved into studying the creative economy. And around the time that I was kind of brainstorming what I was going to do, we were in the recession of what was that 2008. And I just kind of was brainstorming, thinking about the needs of my own network and my personal values. And I really started digging into intellectual property as a way that people could build generational wealth and not have to work forevermore if that wasn't the goal. And so my mission became, how can creatives use the talents that you all are using from day to day to create these revenue streams that could go to work for you well beyond your expiration period of when you didn't want to necessarily work anymore. And so that was really the beginning of Creative Genius Law.
Awesome, awesome. And then the thing is, what I love about your approach is like you're more than just like counsel. Like you're also like a thought partner, when it comes to helping them thinking about what their next moves are, their business strategy, and things like that. So pretty much tell me about like what type of relationships that you try to cultivate with your clients and how is that different than them going to like say somebody else?
Yeah. So we very much thrive on or look to develop a relationship with clients that thrive on a long term partnership. I personally feel that I do my best work for clients when it's not transactional and when we kind of know the larger picture of what you're working for or towards, not just today, but a few years from now, several years from now. And then we can be a key partner in helping you inch closer to that from a legal perspective. And so, in order to be that sort of advisor for you, there has to be a relationship. And I want to mention here that it's the relationship with me, but also my team. One of our kind of barometers as to whether we will work with a new client or not is whether we would do it out of pure exhaustion, whether we would do it out of pure passion. And typically, if that answer is no, then we believe that there's probably another firm that's better suited because our clients don't go away. We have a retention rate of 90%, meaning that the clients who started with us 10 at this point, 11, 12 years ago, are still rocking with us right now. And that's because of that partnership that we really center with our clients.
Awesome, awesome. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs like because so you mentioned an interesting thing. You mentioned like we decide if we work with a client, right? Like so you're not just taking anybody that comes into the door, right? You have a ideal client. I'm sure you have an avatar or things
Mhm.
like that you use to evaluate clients based on. Like, could you share with like other business owners the importance of being particular about who your customer is and saying no sometimes, because I'm sure there were some times where you probably said yes early on in your evolution and growth, the clients you should have said no to. And you might even want to tell us a little bit about how those things panned out and how that led to you just
Mhm.
kind of being a little bit more particular about who you do business with.
Yeah, so early on, I was clear on who I wanted to work with. But that didn't mean that I didn't have fears around it because that meant that I would have a smaller client base. And obviously, when you're starting out and you're really trying to get the word out, a lot of people may feel a little bit of angst around generating less income, around reaching a smaller group. So I was very nervous in the beginning about wanting to work with such a specific clientele. I quickly learned that the work that wasn't meant for me was draining for me. It didn't feel exhilarating. I could do a great job at it, but at the end of the day, I just didn't feel personally inspired by it, which meant that it was harder for me to actually move through, especially back then when I really was a team of one or two. So I had behind the scenes my avatar early on, and I'll credit that to probably Jason probably played a role in that, to be honest, but a few friends who had more knowledge than I did in terms of marketing and that sort of thing. My avatar was Solange, very specific. At the time that I became, and I actually had two avatars. Pharrell is my male avatar, and Solange was my female avatar. And the reason why Solange was my avatar was because she was a multi-passionate creative who was driven by impact. And I felt that if she did have fear, she didn't allow her fear to get in the way of pursuing these avenues in multiple disciplines. At the time, this was shortly around the time that Solange was really showcasing her DJ skills. She was brought on as creative director for Puma, and she was exploring her music. Her music at that time was a little more experimental. And I envisioned Solange as someone who, on the weekend, she was very much an urbanite, but could enjoy the slowness of the country. And on the weekend, she was sipping tea on her porch. She was shopping in thrift stores, and she was rocking her vintage with her high end apparel, just kind of a mix max of whatever she loved. And so that was how specific I got with my avatar. And that helped me land pretty quickly, reach the conclusion that there wasn't a key industry that I served. People would always ask me, well, are you only music? Are you only visual arts? Are you only that? The common thread for me was the multi-passionate creative who cared about impact. They prioritized impact. And so once I got over the fear of being that specific, I was able to really quickly find my people, and those people brought me more people just like them. And so that is how it has progressed over the years. I do get primarily from younger attorneys who will reach out and ask me, hey, like, how did you get so and so as your client? And how did you end up with such a cool client base? And I tell them, I didn't try really. I identified who I was really passionate about working for, and I decided that I would do my best work for them. And they stuck with me and they sent their friends. That's really how it happened.
And you brought up a lot of couple interesting points. The fear of not casting that wider net, the
Mhm.
specificity of who your ideal customer is, like, and people don't recognize, like, you literally got to be able to like that. It has to be as specific as a person. So you
Mhm.
use Solange, and then you go out and you find the other Solanges. You know what I mean? As far as doing multiple things, as far as being creatives, having a passion for impact, and they exist, right? So you have to be super duper specific. But another thing I want to kind of touch on is like the personality aspect, right? So you said it has to be work that energizes you, and then even when you said you were selecting clients, it has to be a client that we would work for exhaustion and passion for, right? All of those things are like hallmark of INFP, or just the idea, or just like the inspire temperament in general. So INFP, ENFP, ENFJ, INFJ, like that passion, that authenticity, if you will, as far as like, this has to align with who I am. This has to be something that I'm passionate about, right? Like, it's not about just chasing the money. It's about like, does this align with my mission overall? And I think the introverted feeling, which I talked about with your dominant function, that comes out like loudly and clearly, in that regard right there. So even like when you're building your businesses, right, and you're setting your principles and your processes, I don't think people always recognize like how their personality, comes into play for that. Another thing I kind of want to like get you to get your perspective on, for like a lot of business owners out there. Like when you first started, you didn't have the name Creative Genius Law. You had a slightly different business model. Like, I remember like early on and whatnot. So like, could you kind of walk everybody through that journey? Like, where you started at, like what told you like I needed to rebrand, what told you I needed to change like my offering,
Mhm.
all of those different things. So I remember the story, but I think it'd be powerful. So I just want you to share that with like the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So early on, I had a brand name that this probably was like the feeling part of me that very much felt right for me, right? And the colors that I had for my brand were like a fuchsia, black, and white. And when I remember having some discussions around, no, actually early on, it was totally built around what I thought was great and what I loved, right? And so it wasn't until a few years later where I realized I was always having to do a deep explanation around what my brand involved. It encompassed everything that I loved, but it always was such a convoluted conversation to explain it to someone else. That was kind of my first indicator that I was probably on the wrong track. And then the second indicator was that at that time, people thought that I was an attorney for women only. And it was because the colors that I chose and the font types and all of that were felt to people very feminine, whatever feminine was for them. And so I would outright have men tell me, hey, like I thought that you just worked with women, and it was because of what that looked like. So it was around the fourth or fifth year, I want to say, maybe it feels like forever now. But I want to say maybe the fourth year of the business where the business was really growing. It was beyond my friends and their friends coming as clients. And I honestly had to put my ego to the side and have a conversation I had a conversation with a couple of close friends who were really good with branding and that sort of expertise. And I just remember the conversation being centered around um, that I recognized that I had not made the best decision for my brand. And I wanted help with what would send a clearer message for going forward. And I again was nervous because your ego can kind of get in the way and you think, oh my God, all these people have seen this brand I put out here. Now I have to pull it back. Am I going to look silly? But I would say that rebranding and really hearing the feedback of those around me, and I did hire to help with the rebrand and all of that. I wasn't totally leaning on just the expertise of friends was the best decision that I made for Creative Genius Law. And so the interesting thing about it was that when it came to the new name, it came to me just like that. I mean, literally. Um, I remember, and Jason, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember Steve Jobs, his whole, what was it, square? He has a quote around the square peg. I don't remember. But anyway, Steve Jobs at the time, and I don't remember what the exact quote was, but had this quote that deeply inspired exactly who I was talking to when I was about legal services. And so once I just reflected, pulled the emotion out of it, I was immediately able to come up with the name. And so the name Creative Genius was very intentional in that I felt that all of my clients were geniuses. I called them everyday geniuses behind closed doors who just didn't recognize the genius. And so I wanted to start calling them creative genius regularly because I felt that if you hear your lawyer say it, and I'm going to creative genius law, then I can recognize my own genius more readily. And so when it's time for us to negotiate deals or to talk about the value of your intellectual property, now I have this elevated perception of myself because I'm now really owning myself as genius when I wasn't before. So that was the intention behind the name. And also, most law firms are named after the founders. I didn't want it to be named after me because I didn't see Creative Genius Law as being about me. I saw it as being about the people who we served. And so, again, using the brand to draw attention to your genius, not necessarily my genius, but the genius of the people who we serve.
That's powerful. That's a powerful story. And it's like almost like a master class. And like some of the challenges that you face when you have to rebrand, when you're not getting traction. And just the recognition that your business is constantly evolving and that the market will tell you what you need to do as far as making adjustments, growing, things like that. I remember when I first heard the new name, and it stuck. It caught immediately. I was like, I think my reaction was like, "Damn, that's fire, son." I think I was like, it was some. I might even spit some rap bars about it. I don't know, but pretty much, I remember like saying, "Yup, that's it." Like that was like my instant, like because pretty much it spoke exactly to who you were targeting as clients. But I love the piece that you stated, and again, the INFP kicking in as far as like helping people understand their potential, helping people, with understanding their value and things like that. All of those things are like classic characteristics of the INFP personality type, is just like elevating people's sense of self-worth and like making it beyond something that's just beyond you, right? This is like mission work for you, right? So like even with the name, the intentionality behind like using it to empower others, the intentionality about like behind as far as making it like the rallying cry and name for your mission is like really really powerful as well, right? So like yeah, like I thought that would just be a powerful story for you to share. So
Thank
pretty
you.
much, you know, I mean, you kind of a big deal now, right? Like you kind of making your company's grown. You got multiple attorneys, working with you. I mean, you have some presence in other markets and things like that. You have some high profile clients. Like, talk about the journey from moving from beyond your immediate network and maybe their immediate network to like really really getting out there, growing the business, building a team. Like, kind of share what that experience was like.
Absolutely. So I would say that it grew very organically. We never did any real advertising for Creative Genius Law just because my person was so specific that most advertising would not work for me. And I tried some, Facebook ads and that sort of thing, really just to experiment with it. And my person wants to have a conversation. And so it was really organic. Our form of marketing and business development was actually to do the best that I could at that time for the clients that I had in front of me. So when I did my best, then they in turn would ultimately become ambassadors for Creative Genius Law. And that's what happened. And so, as you mentioned, it initially was their friends, but then eventually their friends are going to tell their friends if you do a good job for them. And then their friends are going to tell their friends. So that's how the clientele expanded, is because they kept telling their friends. We would not be where we are today if it weren't for trying our best at providing the best service possible and having people who worked with us be willing to go tell their friends. And so, over time, as we were scaling and getting more clients, then the challenge became, okay, now it's not just 5 clients, it's 50 clients. Now it's not just 50 clients, it's 100 clients. How do we continue to provide the same level of quality or an excellent and high quality service to all of these people as we did when it was just a few? And so that has been the thing that we kind of focused on as time has progressed. I forgot the rest of your question, Jason, but that's pretty much what we did. You asked, there was a second part to that. If you remember it, I'd love to
I
answer.
think I forgot it too.
Sorry.
It just sounded hot coming off the tongue, but it was. I really was. I
Right.
think. I think. But the thing is, ultimately, I think you captured the main part of it as far as
Mhm.
understanding, like just sharing what was that journey like as far as like scaling the business, growing your clientele, things like that. I think you definitely touched on it, which like kind of leads to the next question as far as talk about your team. right? So, you started off just by yourself. You've grown the team, and just tell us a little bit about each of your team members, their unique contribution and then over your overall type dynamic as a group. Like
Mhm.
what's that like? What's the culture like and things like that?
Yeah. So I'll start with the culture question. So the culture, I'll just put this out there because I think this will capture it. My team member who is currently our marketing and client experience manager, I found her on LinkedIn. I posted for her role on Indeed and LinkedIn. She applied to the position on LinkedIn, and the first thing on her resume was she was a Rihanna stan, hip hop sensei, and something about Scrabble. It was very like her personality was out there. She had a strong legal background and a clear interest in IP. And I think that speaks to the culture because I appreciated how in our field, it's becoming more creative now. But I feel at that time when I was hiring, our field was still very conservative. And so for me, it spoke to the fact that she was authentic, but also willing to be authentic in an industry that is not as fun and as free spirited. And so I really appreciated that she laid it right out there at the top of her resume. I felt like I saw her for exactly who she was. And so that is actually the culture of the team. Just as I like to serve clients who are multi passionate and who are driven by impact, our team is the same way. We really value authenticity in that I want everyone to be able to come to work as their full selves. We talk about any and everything on the team. If they have outside ventures that they want to pursue, I want their work at Creative Genius Law to be able to fuel that. And so we're very much a bring your whole self to work kind of office. I have had team members thank me, which actually caught me off guard, but thank me and tell me that it means so much to them to be able to come and work at a place where they can just be who they are and they don't have to second guess it or think twice. And so that is the culture that we've created. In terms of the composition of the team, so my very first, from day one, actually, my very first hire was an assistant. And this was because I started Creative Genius Law. I think it's important for people to know that I was working and started Creative Genius Law part
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for 2 years before I transitioned out full time. While I was doing that, I had an assistant because I didn't want people to feel like Creative Genius Law when I go as a client. And at the time, as Jason mentioned, it wasn't Creative Genius Law then, but I didn't want clients to feel like they were a part of my side gig or a part of my hustle. And so I had an assistant from day one because when I was at my full time job, I need people to know they're cared for and that we're on top of things and for us to be handling business. So I had an assistant from day one, part time. And then from that point, I brought on my first full time employee several years later after I was full time, and that was as a legal assistant. So I hired the legal assistant, and then I realized, oh, I need another person to support her. So I hired an administrative assistant. So the administrative assistant didn't necessarily have legal experience, but they had executive office administrative experience. Then I hired an attorney. So those are the four full time team members. The legal assistant got promoted over time to be the manager, marketing and client experience manager. That really was more so her passion and her best fit with our company. So those are my full time team members. And then I have four additional team members, two who are case support. So anytime we have a file, there is a bunch of work happening in the background and two people who support those files to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And then I have an intake lead and an onboarding lead. So a total of 18 members, and they all contribute in different ways. And we couldn't be where we are today as a company without the contributions of those women, all women.
Another thing I'll say about your firm is that, like you said, the legal firm is trying to be a little bit more creative now, but like back when you really got started, like you were kind of like an outlier in that regard. Everybody, was wearing their suit still, trying to be super professional, which you should as an attorney, right? But you from day one was able to like bring your authentic self while still, having that credibility and whatnot. And you got some early shine and recognition just in your approach. Like I remember going into your office and I'm like, this office swagged for a legal office. Like where's the heavy oak stuff and everything? This stuff, like, this swagged out. Like, your whole like it had the Patrice stamp from day one. I definitely would say that as far as like, your approach and things like that. So describe yourself as a leader, right? So now you have, 8 people on the team. Like, I'm sure that you're passionate about their professional development because you've talked about they've had side ventures, you support it, and things like that. Talk about yourself as a leader.
So I would say that as a leader, so one thing that we always hear from a lot of entrepreneurs is we want to be entrepreneurs because we want freedom in time and freedom in money. And that may vary for a lot of folks, but I feel like that's the common theme. As a leader, the things that I want for myself, I very much want for my team. And so, in order for us to get there, that means we have to constantly be developed as employees within the company. So, right now, 3 people on my team are currently going through leadership training along with me. They're doing that alongside me because they have a leadership role. And I want them to be developed just as I regularly invest in my own development. So, I'm very big on continuing education and development. I'm very big on making sure that people are paid well. I had I I can't share this publicly, but a team member really surprised me with a message about a month ago that literally I say my eyes were sweating, but I broke down in tears because she was telling me all of the things that she was able to do for her family that she was not able to do prior. And that team member has been with us for a year. And she was very specific about it. And so that's my dream for myself as a leader and for the team to be able to see for them to be able to experience a clear elevation in their lives because they are working with Creative Genius Law. So I want us to all be paid handsomely. And so I don't penny pinch when it comes to their salaries. Um, they get grade A health benefits, which was very important to me. I don't want people to be stressed about medical care that they might need. And so the lens that I approach leadership with is honestly, how would I want to be treated if I were employed by another company? So I want to be able to come to work as my full self. I want to be able to get paid well, have great benefits, have great ways to engage with my colleagues, and have constant development and training and the opportunity to be open and honest with my boss. And so those are the things that I try to do for my team as their leader.
That's really powerful. And then again, the personality, characteristics are shining through on that. The emphasis on professional development, the emphasis on authenticity, right? All of those things are like INFP hallmarks, right? Because, as an INFP, you want to help people reach their full potential. You want people to have the freedom to be their authentic self and to, express themselves uniquely because, everybody should have that right? So even like in the way you're leading and the way you're, like building your team, all of those personality strengths kind of are shining through and everything. So what do you feel like your superpower is, right? So we talked about yourself as a leader, but overall, what do you feel like your personality superpower is?
I think that my superpower is the ability to connect dots in ways that are if we think about a record, an album, and how you would have the A side tracks and the B side, I connect the dots on the B side. So the side that people aren't paying attention to
Bars.
that is not getting as much buzz that's not, you know, on the top of any like top hits list. And so I'm able to connect those dots in a way that's unexpected. I also, and I didn't realize this until years ago, probably about 6 years, 6, 7 years ago. I am really in tune with like what's next. So I don't necessarily know that I would call it trends, but I'm very much in tune with like, oh, this thing is going to be big, or that person is going to be big. And it's something that just comes to me naturally. And it wasn't until I think someone brought it to my attention that I realized, like, oh, that's actually a gift. But I'm very much in tune with like what's on the horizon. So being able to connect the dots of the B side with having just like in here a feeling of what's next is my superpower.
No doubt. No doubt. I like that I connect the dots on the B side. That's a t-shirt, yo. You might have to put that somewhere. You know how we ride, we connect dots on the B side. I don't know,
I
like
love
put
that.
it on some verse. I don't know, but yeah. I think those are, yeah. I mean, pretty much you speak into a lot of the things that are natural to your personality type. The ability to like identify patterns quicker than everybody else. So, you're able to identify quickly, without even being able to explain it, just knowing like, okay, this is going to be the next big thing. This artist is going to be the next big, thing, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're able to operate accordingly based on that. I think that's just something that anybody with an intuitive preference, especially like somebody who has, which are your secondary function, extrovert and intuition, like that's when that's kind of coming in as far as like being able to see what's next, being able to identify, opportunities and things like that. I think that's really, really powerful. So, what would you say your kryptonite is?
My kryptonite has been, as my firm has grown, having to struggle with letting go of not being in control of everything. That has been like a real stress point for me because I am a person who likes to know all the things that's happening and to know everything's in order. But naturally, as the business grows, you have other people on the team that are charged with some of that control and making sure things are moving along. And so the kryptonite has been really being okay with letting go, like for the longest, and it still is to a certain extent, but I'm trying to change the identity. For the longest, my firm was my baby. And so when you have other people who are charged with taking care of your baby, naturally as the mom, there's still like angst, and you're, checking behind the baby, or the people who are charged with taking care of the baby and all of that. And so that has been being okay with letting go has been the kryptonite. I'm about 60% there, but
So
the
what's
need
happening
to sign
is,
off on everything. Like I don't need to sign off on everything. It just holds people up, holds things up from getting done. So that's the kryptonite.
yeah, using the baby metaphor, your baby has become a teenager and now they have a car and they're kind of driving on their own, and
Right.
yeah, and you're like, oh, you okay? And they're like, Mom, leave me alone. Like that's literally like what Creative Genius Law is doing right now. It's a
Yeah.
rebellious teenager at this point. That's the stage is reached as far as your business maturity. Another thing that is really, really challenging, another thing that you're mentioning, that's really, really challenging for entrepreneurs, right?
Mhm.
So pretty much, there as you like grow your business, you become further, you become additional steps away from the work. So when you first launch, you're doing the work directly, but you're also doing all the administrative stuff, the executive stuff, strategic stuff, and everything and all of that. You grow a little bit, now you're able to have some people do some of the direct work, but you're still managing them and you're still close enough to the work where you're able to still have your hand in it and whatnot. But then once you kind of become a CEO, right, and you kind of get to that point where you have people that you're managing and they're managing people, now you're two steps away from the work, right?
Mhm.
And when you're two steps away from the work, that's when the fear can come, because it's like you might be concerned that the standards aren't going to be at your level of what you're used to, or you just not being able to touch it is like frustrating or challenging, as an entrepreneur. But that's when like culture comes into play, right? making sure that you create a cohesive culture and that you have people that are in alignment with that culture, who fit like, your standards of excellence, who fit like the way you want clients to be treated, and who just believe in what you believe in, right? Creating a team that reflects that. So even though you're not directly engaging in the work is being done in a way that you feel it needs to be done, because you've created the culture and the processes that enable it to get done, right? So what ends up happening is, as you step further away from the work, who you hire, the type of leader that you are, the type of culture that you create is going to be the things that dictate the performance at the line level, as far as where work is taking place, as opposed to you being able to like influence it with your will directly. That's why everybody's not great at being leaders all the time, right? Because you got somebody who's a phenomenal technician, somebody who's great at doing the job, and then they got to manage people, and it's like, I just do it myself, right? So like, it's a fear, but it seems like you have managed it well. It seems like you haven't sacrificed any quality. You got a team that is in alignment with the things that you believe in. You have a team that is excellent, right? Because you're still growing, right? So those are things that you definitely want to take into consideration. But I know it's hard, and you getting there. 60% is better than some people. Like. Yeah.
And I want to add something there, because the other thing with the growth is, as the leader, having to let go of this idea that things could always be perfect. That was really hard for me, because personally, I'm a perfectionist and I want everything to be perfect. And so I had to come to a place, and this is all still very much in practice with me, but come to a place where, as you grow, things are just not going to be perfect. There are going to be balls dropped. There are going to be mistakes made. And it doesn't mean that anyone is bad at their job, or you're a bad leader, or now all of a sudden your company doesn't provide quality services. And so I used to have a very strong reaction to, even if it was internal, like, oh my God, we made a mistake. And so now I can say, part of the work has been working through that and just accepting it as, no, this is a part of the progression. And so you take those mistakes and you use them to inform, okay, what do we need to learn from this to go forward? But it doesn't mean that you quit, or that everybody is just a big fuck up. It's just going to happen. And the largest companies in the world make mistakes. And so we just learn from them and move on. And so that has been really huge with the growth as well.
And then also, like, as you're giving people increasing autonomy, you gotta kind of give them some space to feel, right? In the sense that, it's going to be stretch opportunities, and, they may make mistakes initially, but you can leverage those mistakes to learn and to like help build people's capacity and help people, like grow professionally as well. But like, because what you don't want to do is make people so afraid to fail that you don't get their best work. And, especially with the work that you're doing, like, you need everybody in there to be creative, right? You need everybody in there to be on fire, be open to sharing ideas and things like that. And you can't do that in an environment where people are afraid to fuck up, Exactly. So definitely like that progression and learning that is really, really important as well. So like, what motivates you to keep going daily, right? So pretty much, like, when you're running a business, there could be some days where you just like, I don't feel like doing this shit. Or it could just be like, I'm stressed out, or you could be overwhelmed. But like, you can't quit from yourself, right? You can't fire yourself, right? So you got to keep going. So like, what are the things that keep you motivated and keep you going, like, as you grow your company each day?
Honestly, when I take time to sit and reflect on the impact that it's having for other people, there are always hard days. And so what I've had to do is really just build in time to be still. And I'll do an exercise where I'll compare like this day to this day a year ago and 2 years ago. And I actually journal in that way. Like, I'll journal snapshots from the day. So being able to go back and review this day 3 years ago in CGL, I'm able to see that the nature of the challenges that I might have today are much different than I had 3 years ago. And I'm able to see how the worries that I might have had 3 years ago that's like water under the bridge today. And so being able to just go and reflect in snapshots has been tremendous for me. And then also when I think about my own legacy, um, the gift and the curse of building a law firm is that unless I have a child who wants to be a lawyer, the law firm can't get passed down to, a non-lawyer child. And so I think about the legacy that I want Creative Genius Law to leave. And I want it to be a place where people love to work. I want it to be a place where clients feel that's made real impacts on their business. And when I do that snapshot review for myself, I can see it getting closer. And so when I think about my life after retirement, what does that look like for me? Creative Genius Law will keep going beyond me. That's very much the vision.
Mm.
And I wanted to continue to make that impact. And so thinking about how at some point, some other young lawyer will have Creative Genius Law and be able to get the same fulfillment, not just in here, but also financially from CGL. That legacy piece of it is really tremendous for me because I am still convinced to this day that there is no other firm like us, period. In terms of like the work environment and what we have done and what we continue to do with our clients, there's no other firm. And I want someone else to be able to carry that on. And so I can't leave before I'm done setting the foundation for it to continue.
That was powerful, yo. That was really, really powerful. I think one thing that I'm steal that you do is like the snapshots. That's like Facebook memories for like your business. Like like 3 years ago, like that's powerful. That's really, really powerful.
There's an app for that. I'm gonna send it to you because we can't promote for free because maybe one day there'll be a sponsor of your
Right.
podcast. But there's an app for that where you journal, and when you log in, it'll show you this is what you wrote 4 years on this day,
That's
3 years on
powerful.
this day. Mm-hmm.
That's powerful. Facebook memories for your business. Like that's the way. That's hot. So do you have any advice for other INFPs out there? Like any business advice, personal advice? Like what advice would you give to somebody with your same personality type?
Yep. So I would say the biggest piece of advice is to trust your gut. My profession requires me to be analytical and to write all the things down. So I am very much left-brained in that way. But following my gut has been one of the big things that has landed us in this place. And so I would say don't underestimate the value of like your gut instincts. Don't be afraid of experimentation. I am very, I feel like I'm going to say it backwards, but when you are not afraid of taking risks, Jason knows, I'll take a risk for the business very easily. And I think being open to taking risks and to experimenting with things in the business would be important for other folks with my personality type. Because again, we just learned that we're very led by going within and by feeling and values and all of that. So you have to trust that in your business and don't try to separate it from the business.
Awesome. Well, Patrice, you have any like final thoughts? I don't mean to Jerry Springer you. Remember he's like the final thoughts. You have any final thoughts?
Um, no, this was really fantastic. I've enjoyed watching the episodes over the last few weeks, and so I'm happy to be a guest. And I hope that people continue to listen and take away some of the gems that you've been dropping for them.
Awesome. Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me at creativegeniuslaw.com, on Instagram at creativegeniuslaw, and then you can find me personally on Instagram at creative_ESQ.
Awesome. Well, Patrice, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Definitely enjoyed it. And we got to get together in person, soon too, and everything. You got to get you out here to Indiana. Or,
I'm coming.
Now you got to say it like Indiana. You got to get it. But all right, it's been real chatting with you. Enjoyed the conversation tonight, Patrice. Chat with you soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye. And that concludes this week's episode of the Entrenality podcast. Be sure to tune in next week with us, where we have another amazing guest. And this is Jason William Johnson signing off.